Hey, it's Daily Update Time, YouTube. The question of the day comes from a patron, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a while. Are you guys ready to stop talking about coronavirus just for this one daily update? Because I completely am. Are you with me? Whew, yep. So we will. We're not going to talk about coronavirus, at least until the end of answering this very important spiritual topic. And the question has been presented to me for the past 20 years, not just this one time from this one patron. So one of you messaged me today about a spiritual experience that your wife had, and it was prompted by deep meditation and spiritual practice. So I want to just kind of read through the basics of your question and give you my take on it. It just because I think it could help everybody right now. This patron says, my wife's engagement in meditation and the study of mediumship has seemingly led to a series of life-threatening events. Our interpretation of what happened is not only by our own experiences, but by the advice of a psychic medium that has since become a family friend. She was firstly possessed by 3 spirits simultaneously, which caused a car accident and landed her in the psychiatric ward. The medium who managed to help her be rid of these spirits told us this was a question of connecting with proper protective measures. There appears to be different schools of thought on whether such protection is needed. The idea was then to learn how to do things the right way, and so we, including myself, took some lessons from this medium about 4 months later. Then there was a second event which involved a cloaked spaceship hovering above our house with beings inside attempting to manipulate and overpower my wife mentally. I can't confirm that there was actually an alien, but my wife did react to it, as did the medium, who then confirmed it with another medium. And the medium then explained that despite protective measures, there was a subconscious part of my wife that was connecting inadvertently. Then more recently, my wife had serious psychotic episodes in which even the medium that had instructed us until this point told us this was more of an issue of the mind than something spiritual. Here's where it gets interesting, even more so than aliens. Aliens are actually pretty normal in spiritual experiences from what I've learned on this planet. Where was I? Okay, so the medium said this was more of an issue of my wife's mind than something spiritual, and that my wife most likely needed to work things out with psychological help. The escalation of this major psychotic episode landed my wife in the psych ward for a second time. Meanwhile, the medium also said that we're light workers who are supposed to be engaged in this kind of work. Furthermore, she explained there was a tension going on between the light and entering a higher vibration and the psychological issues my wife had yet to address, and that this was a wake-up call to address these issues first. She had been doing very well since coming out of the psych ward and would be beginning psychotherapy in a short while. She's on medications and there's no more sign of the psychotic behavior. I should stress that even if, like most of us, my wife has deeply rooted childhood issues to work through, she has never had a history of psychosis or mental illness. We do wonder about whether the recent episodes are purely mental and psychological as opposed to something like Kundalini psychosis. We'd be most grateful if you have any advice about this and her spiritual path moving forward, and whether it be direct from you or her higher self. I'm just going to put this directly from me. Granted, I don't feel much of an other these days in my life. So let's start with the whole experience of your psychic says. When you go to a medium, despite the fact that you go to another medium and then another medium and then another medium, they all saying the same things. Mediums see the same things, so they're going to say the same things. So I'm not saying don't get spiritual advice, but I'm saying that the best spiritual advice comes from within. So it looks like you were guided as well as you can be in this particular scenario, and that the medium was definitely trying to help you. I'm not trying to put that otherwise, but I do notice that people bring too much power to psychics, too much power to mediums, trying to kind of prompt them into experiences, when Kundalini awakenings, if a person isn't emotionally ready, can actually be very physically and mentally dangerous. Many of my living gurus and gurus in spirit told me, please leave your Kundalini alone. And they told me that when I wasn't ready. to handle what would probably have been the same thing as what your wife experienced. So when it comes to, this whole process, my personal view as a spiritual teacher is that true awakening, true realization, enlightenment, whatever it is you want to call it, people have different words for the same thing, is there to restore and regenerate the human being. And that most obvious sign of a safe awakening, and a real spiritual experience that involves a safe awakening that's good for you, true realization and enlightenment, is safe. And it's this palpable peace, not this fighting with aliens that are trying to get you, not the, someone's going to abduct you and do something bad. That's not a part of a psychologically stable, true spiritual awakening. Why? Because love is truth and fear is not. So when fear gets involved, what's happening in my experience is what we call depersonalization, derealization disorder. Okay, DDD. That is the newest psychological textbook meaning for what used to be called multiple personality disorder, as well as it could also be schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder at bay. So this is when the Kundalini goes awry and doctors give it a name and call it something. So whatever, this is not me saying it's right, it's wrong, it's good, it's bad. It's me saying you are losing the battle with your mind. And if you want to call it whatever you want to call it, matters not. You are losing. Psychosis is an example of you losing the battle of your mind, which is completely off the chart from a safe, true spiritual awakening. So this is a really serious issue in society, because all society needs right now is a bunch of mentally ill people masquerading as liberated souls and enlightened souls, because they're not. Enlightenment does not involve this. Enlightenment is a peaceful person who puts forth a palpable feeling of compassion. That is enlightenment. A true kind of healing presence where you feel just nurtured. You'll get a feeling of divine mother or divine father. You'll feel just held. That is what you should feel in enlightenment and around an enlightened, realized being. Okay, so I'm just using these words because people like these words on earth. I don't care what you call it. Awakened, Kundalini, rising, realized, ascended, enlightened. It's all the same thing. And if fear is involved in it, you are losing the battle with your mind. That's not an awakening. That is you going into psychosis. And at that point, yes, you need help. Okay, so these are red flags, and it's just this true thing that you need to look for in enlightenment is the truth that brings you closer to yourself and closer to each other and closer to nature and closer to the earth, closer to being grounded, closer, not flying up with the aliens and not dissociating and being dangerous to yourself because you're losing your mind. None of that stuff. I don't see grandiosity in true enlightenment and awakening. I don't see when people come through and say, I am this angel, I am Jesus, I am this, and I am the only one. Not a true spiritual experience insofar as what I've observed as, an awakening, right? It's just something that I've noticed it's an issue that 50% of DDD and schizophrenic and schizoaffective disorder symptoms are considered transient experiences that mimic spiritual awakenings that are ungrounded. Why is that? Something to think about. Okay. And so far as my coronavirus channeling, so many of you are asking about it, so I'll finally talk about it now. You can find it on patreon.com/Pamela Aaralyn. When you do that, click on post and just scroll down and it's pinned right to the top right there for you. If you have any problems, just let us know. We are doing it again, okay? I believe on April 13th, but you can look at the schedule there. We're doing it again for patrons a part 2 going much more in depth with your questions and just following how it's going and what the bell curve is on our healing, and answering a lot more questions about that there on April the 13th. On Patreon as well. So you can sign up. I'll put the links below. Don't forget about the Yeshua 2020 Shift channeling, which is coming up. It's not a Patreon event, so you can get that on my website. And I'm offering it for as low cost as possible. And that's on my website right now. We still have a few seats left for it. Not sold out yet, but I imagine it will be here, within a week or so, if not less. It's just going like hotcakes. So PamelaAaralyn.com on that one, guys. I hope you're all well. I love you. Thank you for listening to these daily updates. That particular topic about enlightenment versus psychosis has been on my mind for the past few years. I've just seen more and more people waking up and calling it awakening when what's really happening is they're losing the battle with their minds and they need some help. So if you're out there and you're listening to that and it applies to you, I'm not saying that you need to do what my Patreon did and go into a mental institution. I have blogs about that as well. That blog, if you're curious about my take on mental hospitals and what spiritual awakening symptoms can be, you can look up my blog called Imprisoned Prophets, because I don't actually believe in psych wards unless absolutely necessary, where a person's in danger of hurting themselves or other human beings. If you can work it out with a shaman, you can work it out with a spiritual teacher, you can work it out through emotional integration with a help from someone, not by yourself. You definitely are going to need help from someone. Then try that first. And again, because this is YouTube and they don't like for me to talk about medical things, I must remind you, and a proper legal disclaimer, that I am not a medical professional who is not qualified to medically treat you or diagnose you, because YouTube makes me say it or they will delete my videos. I love you guys. I hope you're safe and well. Thank you so much for following these updates and giving me the chance to provide my perspectives to you about things going on spiritually and all around the world. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.